right, welcome back to another exciting episode of CNC on CFB,
Oh yeah,
breaking down a really tumultuous week in college football. Should be a lot of fun stuff
for
to talk
sure.
about.
Oh yeah,
I think we're going to start things off with a segment we debuted last week that we really like. Kyle, tell me, what are your top four takeaways from the games you watched on Saturday?
sure. So I think a theme for these is we kind of saw quite a few of these kind of coming, and I think over these past couple weeks, especially obviously with this past weekend,
Mhm.
I think one of my top four takeaways has to be that I think the Pac-12 is just going to continue to kind of eat itself alive here as we kind of get into the stretch of the season.
Yeah, we've talked about it. We've theorized it might happen. It already looks like it's happening.
Yeah, and I think really you saw an Oregon State team, I mean, climb all the way up to almost inside the top 10. And then your Wildcats, the Arizona Wildcats, man, taking care of business. Not to the tune of a team total over quite enough. We'll get into that later, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think the Wildcats kind of did their part, I think, in this takeaway, primarily as, top 15 upset, so to speak, but was always a close game, always a close line. Could see that coming. And I just looked down, I guess, down the board. I mean, Oregon kind of over Utah. I mean, I think, Oregon was always favored, but Utah just kind of the way they lost. I
Well,
don't
this
know.
Utah team's a really good team, and I'm going to hop in and piggyback here because that
Hmm.
was one of my four takeaways as well. So we'll kind of split this one, I
Okay.
guess.
Yeah. Leave it to
But
you.
yeah, this Utah team, they are a very good team. They have two losses, both to other Pac 12 teams.
Hmm.
Oregon has one loss to a Pac 12
Yeah.
team. USC struggling in the Pac 12. Oregon State, who you talked about, they have two losses now, also both to Pac 12 teams.
Yeah.
So it really does feel like the cannibalization of the conference by itself. They're eating their own.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what happens when you have a lot of really good teams in a conference.
Yeah. And I think even some other games that I guess aren't quite, in the limelight due to maybe some of the opponents or the top, I guess rank statuses, but even, former or not former, still
Mhm.
darlings in my heart, the Washington State Cougars losing to Arizona State.
Yep.
And then your
Colorado, how about
Colorado,
your
my
Colorado
Colorado Buffs, they
Buffaloes
were always, well, they covered
taking
at
what, three
least.
Pac-12 losses now? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Well, but then even teams that we expect to roll to the point of almost four touchdown lines. Washington against Stanford's.
yep.
I
And
mean,
coming off of a tough game against Washington against Arizona State the week before,
yeah,
another Pac-12 team.
yeah. So is something brewing maybe for Washington? It's really interesting. I think we'll see. Funny enough, they almost just stumbled again. The Trojans
Yep.
just eking out a win against Cal Berkeley in a battle of the
Another
Cows.
Pac-12 team.
Yes. But that'll be an interesting matchup with Caleb Williams, maybe as motivated as ever to kind of maybe show out versus Michael Penix. Obviously, we'll get into that later this week.
Yep.
But yeah, Pac 12, just a lot of chaos. And I think if you're the Pac 12 in this final year, you just hope, I guess, Oregon, Washington, one of them probably does have a top four resume when it's all said and done. It's looking like that's going to be the case, but you never know with one loss teams.
Hell, they could both end up with two losses,
Yeah,
Phil. That is
yeah,
not off the
that's
table.
exactly. I think that highlights what we're dealing with here. And then I think just going into my next takeaway, staying in, I guess, this realm of conferences, I think the Big 12 is just really not that great. What we thought was really good, maybe top to bottom. I think with Oklahoma, we saw their vulnerability against UCF the week before
Yeah.
and succumbed to a, I think, solid Kansas team.
I think Kansas is good. And when I talked about last week, we talked about who can remain undefeated.
Mhm.
When I broke down Oklahoma's schedule, I said they don't have another ranked team on it, but they have Kansas, who's almost ranked, Oklahoma State, who's
Yeah,
almost ranked. That middle tier of the Pac-12, I mean of the Big 12, is not great. It's not like the Pac-12 where they're all like really live teams, but they're all good enough to beat anybody else in that conference.
sure, sure. And I think it's just maybe, and I guess it does need to be said. I guess we see now Kansas State kind of climbing back in. They just
Yep.
got a big. I mean, they completely wiped Houston 41-0. So I think there's maybe it is. Maybe I'm a little bit harsh in saying as a whole the conference. I guess kind of blanketly saying that, but I guess at the top end, what we thought was almost
It was.
guaranteed to be maybe a top four spot is looking like there's no chance.
We thought they had two juggernauts in the
Yeah,
conference, and
yeah,
it doesn't look like they have any.
no, no, but maybe some teams that maybe they make some bowl noise. Who knows? But and who knows what the top 25 looks like when it's all said and done. But just not as top heavy as it looked like it was nearly just even when we not even 3-4 weeks ago, I guess. But that's just the name of this game. How quick things can change, and I think maybe on the opposite of how things maybe change, what hasn't changed is how Georgia is still a phenomenal team. And when you count them out, or maybe myself with the loss of Brock Bowers, they come out of the gates maybe a little bit stumbling. They were trailing for briefly against Florida in what is obviously a marquee matchup year after year. But I think Georgia just made a statement in my estimation that, hey, we're fine. We'll be very much, I think, back in obviously Atlanta, and then I guess the Peach Bowl for the playoff. They'll be right back where they've been. I think is what they kind of showed me this past weekend, that they're totally fine. But and then speaking of teams that are more than fine in more than a good position, I think Florida State is showing that, to me, they're kind of creeping up into maybe arguing, hey, top four. Obviously, that's where the playoff line's drawn.
Yep.
But just in terms of maybe top tiers, Florida State, I mean, I don't see why they really don't deserve to be in the same tier, I guess, as the Georgias and Michigans of the world. In my opinion, that's just what they're making a really strong push.
Yeah, certainly.
But, all right. Con, those are my top four. We did share one of them. So take away your next three.
My next three. All right. My third one is that this is the most complete, or I don't want to say most complete, but it doesn't make any sense in this context.
Okay.
But there are more good group of five teams this year than we've seen in a very long time. And no one is talking about it because they don't have the top end, the Cincinnati or the UCF that's pushing to make the college football playoff. But they have three undefeated teams still. All three won this past week. The only one that even played a close game was James Madison. The other two were blowouts. And Air Force, we talked about, that could be a real tough game against that Colorado State defense, and it didn't look tough for them at all. And then in addition to that, we have a really good Fresno State team who has been ranked this year. They just won an awesome game, I thought, against UNLV, who's also very good. Thought that might bump them back into the rankings. Not quite, but maybe next week. We've talked about how good Toledo is this year. We've talked about Wyoming having a great season. Feels like everywhere you look in all of the different, non-Power 5 conferences, there's at least one really good team, if not two. And I just think shout out to the group of five in general. It's a really good group of five this year, but they don't have that one top tier team that can, push for a college football playoff spot. So nobody's really taken notice.
Sure. But yeah, just in terms of strength and numbers, there are like you're saying, quite a few really good, non-traditionally good teams maybe we think of, but having great years this season for sure.
Yeah. So then my second takeaway is the juggernauts are back. We spent so much of this year going, it's as wide open as ever. All the teams at the top look shaky. They look like they could lose. They could this, that. Now all of a sudden we have Georgia, like you said, looks like they planted their flag and said, we're back. We were always Georgia.
Yeah.
And, we probably should have seen that coming off of back-to-back national championships, but
Yeah, maybe.
they did it. Michigan didn't play this past week, but they haven't played a close game yet. They've been blowing everybody out. Ohio State with a very nice win. They didn't look as impeccable as those other two, but 14 points over a good Wisconsin team is saying, hey, we're not going to get let down after the big Penn State win. We're here, to still win win the Big Ten. And then Florida State, who you mentioned, incredible week for them again. Blew out Wake, looked really good doing it. And it's all of a sudden starting to look at the very top, like it's shaping out to a season we're more used to seeing, where the top of the top looks elite.
I think, absolutely, that's the case. And I mean, who knows? Maybe if we drew a line in the sand where how we think the top four is going to play out right now, I could easily see not too much changing, I guess, from what a top four, if we were to make a top four today,
Yeah.
and what it ultimately is. And we still have 4 weeks to go. There's still a lot. There's a lot, I guess, that could happen, but a lot
But it's
that maybe
looking
I
less and
don't
less
think.
likely that
Yeah,
that stuff will
exactly,
happen. Yeah.
exactly. A lot that I don't think will happen. Yeah.
And then my final takeaway is that I'm a genius and I should never doubt myself because I have called two top tier teams in this country frauds this year. Put the fraud stamp on them, came out and said they are not as good as they look. They are not as good as their record says.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those teams lost in embarrassing upsets this week. So
Yeah.
I feel pretty good about that one. Took me a little longer on the Oklahoma take than I was hoping when I initially said it. But
Yeah. I mean,
the UNC, I said it 3 weeks ago, they've lost two in a row.
mm-hmm. And it's funny. I guess we just maybe it's if anything, this is a lesson. Don't go away from your gut instinct, even after they might beat a team like Texas. When we think, oh wait, we need to owe them so much more respect. But the last couple weeks, I think we're really more true to, I guess, your inclinations, what you're thinking, and exposing, I guess, what I guess Oklahoma isn't, if you
Yeah.
will.
And this is not to say that they're a bad football team,
No,
but
no.
I didn't see them as the sixth best team in the country at
Yeah.
any point, and the sixth best team in the country doesn't lose to Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
But the one more point I want to make on that kind of ties into my last thing about the Juggernauts being back is that it feels like we're starting to weed out all of these kind of phonies at the top, and we're getting a much more clear picture than we had a couple weeks ago as to who's a real threat to do something and who isn't.
Sure. And I guess it's funny. I just go back, I think, to one of our beginning shows. I guess really first maybe reaction show, where I think we both ended up, I guess, a little bit slightly overreacting to the Oklahoma win over Texas for sure, to the tune of, oh, we have them at basically, I think it was, we both had them at the fourth best team at that time, but clearly
Yeah.
I think their ceiling is more of maybe the 10th best team, if we're being honest. Maybe not even that, but we'll see.
Yeah. And now all of a sudden the Big 12 title race is pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, kind of blown wide open, I guess. And yeah, I'm just interested to see, I guess, with how it's relatively trending. Maybe I'm not gonna go as far as to say it with them, but Texas, if they just kind of scrape by and they have one loss and they're a one loss Big 12 winner, we'll see what else happens. But
They'll make the college football playoff if they're one loss Big 12 champ and their one losses to Oklahoma. You'd have
you
to.
think?
I would think so. Also,
Okay.
not to do the Texas is back thing, but they looked pretty back this week. I don't know if you watched any of that game, but
I was a little bit box score watching, to be honest, but I mean, I saw Adonai A.D. Mitchell really come back into the fold, showing his dominance as just a red zone, a touchdown threat pretty much at all times. I mean, the guy's a monster, another NFL draft darling. And Texas, look, they have a couple, and they have weapons on offense, and
they do.
they're not and they're not a total pushover defense, I don't think. So they could be, for as maybe reactionary as my sentiment is to the Big 12 currently, they could still have some, Texas, I think, has a chance to kind of, if there is a team on the outside looking maybe to make a back end push, I think Texas is the team. We'll see. I mean, I guess just off the top of the head here, we're just thinking of, I guess, what a lot that we don't think is going to happen in terms of what we think after this past weekend, what we think is just going to happen here. We have Georgia, okay, Michigan or Ohio State, and
Florida State would be
Florida
the one
State.
that if they don't trip up, you would have to put in.
And then Pac-12, maybe Washington or Oregon, and then
or maybe Texas.
or maybe Texas. So I think that's kind of almost like the five. It's going to be the obviously Georgia, I think SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, assuming Florida State doesn't trip up, the Pac, and then Pac Big 12. I think might be the line where what it's looking like. I think might have to be where the line's drawn. But
And there are, very realistic scenarios that Ohio State or Michigan lose by like a field goal
Yeah,
and don't lose any other games, and
yeah.
you have to think about that.
Truly, if you have to look in the mirror and say who is truly the top 14, yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be tough to one of Ohio State, Michigan for sure. And yeah, we'll just see how they have a lot of things could happen still, especially with Michigan's two games against the Penn States and Ohio States
Mhm.
of the world. So
And
a
the
lot to
SEC,
still
we're saying how great Georgia is. They haven't won it yet. There are multiple
against.
one-loss SEC teams that could win the SEC with one loss and have to
Yeah,
beat Georgia to do that, and that would be a hell of a resume there.
no, that's absolutely no. I mean, so I guess there's still a lot to be decided. A
But
lot to be
this is what
decided,
we
but
talked about earlier.
yeah,
There's a lot that can happen.
yeah, but we
It's
don't
looking more
think.
and more likely that none of those crazier scenarios are
Uh
gonna
huh.
happen.
Uh huh. So maybe the time to just lay some futures for in terms of college, either
Mhm.
top four, national title champion. We'll see.
But
We'll
I
see.
will toss you into your ballin' and fallen segment. Tell me who was ballin' and who was fallen this week.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. I'll just change it up for this week. I'll go just purely teams, and
I
I
like it.
think that's because individual players, of course, deserve their shine
Hmm.
from time to time. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it's a team sport, right? And it's not individuals, and you live and die by more than one guy on that field. For as good as we're seeing, case in point, Caleb Williams, right?
Yeah.
Your quarterback can be awesome, but you got to be a complete team here. But I think, look, I'll just start with the Fallins here, just get the negative out of the way. But I think for me at three, I'm going to go with Utah. Just the manner in which they lost to Oregon. I think in our pre-coverage of it, we
Hmm.
saw, I think, a close game,
Yeah.
quite honestly. But Lanning, Bo Nix, and that Oregon team, I think, did everything in their power to make sure they came out firing, and it was never really close. So for
Yeah.
that,
We said styles make fights, and
yeah.
this one's probably gonna be if it's an offensive game, Oregon wins, but if it's a defensive game, Utah wins.
Hmm.
And it was both for Oregon. They played offense and defense, and it was neither
Yeah.
for Utah. They played neither. So
Yeah. 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 No, I mean, absolutely. And not to, I mean, it was an interesting week, I guess, to pick some Fallens, but I guess just for what was maybe on at stake for Utah,
yeah.
I think it's just they just kind of creep in here, the third Fallen of this week. And then look, I think top two, we've kind of already discussed them, but I think the reason I have UNC as my second for Fallen after look, they've been on a bit of a schneid now for a couple weeks, but
Mhm.
I just think losing, you have the tough loss to Virginia, obviously, and then you really have another tough loss against a Georgia Tech team who just
Hey, now this
seemingly has
Georgia
your
Tech team
number.
could beat anybody. This Georgia Tech team, they're good.
Just,
I will say, actually,
yeah,
Haynes King looks really good at quarterback for
hey,
Georgia Tech.
yeah, that's Texas A&M
Transfer,
kind of
yeah.
rejected out of there, and then
Mhm.
he's put, yeah, absolutely a revival for Haynes King for sure. Yeah, he's absolutely, in terms of we're talking about individual performances from an individual. If I
Yeah,
was to individually for Ballin, Haynes King
yeah.
absolutely right up there, but
But
for
yeah, that's not a game that
UNC.
UNC can lose.
No, and I think for me, it's almost just like it's funny for this time of year. I guess I almost am reminded, I guess, that, and it's funny, we'll get to maybe another North Carolina based team, but I'm reminded maybe of how now UNC, they're a basketball school. I guess we can maybe say, not to be that too harsh, but I think, look, you're a top 10 team. You got Drake May. I mean, going to be a top five pick in the draft, potential Heisman hopeful. But, everything just comes crashing down after a bit of a glass house undefeated start for
Yeah.
whatever it was, 6 weeks, to start the year. But yeah, UNC, just for what I feel like for them was a chance to kind of announce they're at least a serious
Yeah.
team this season. Just not the case. And I guess the ACC, it's really a creme de la creme is Florida State, and it's
Yeah.
everybody else.
And now this throws, not that it's that important, but it throws into question who's Florida State can be playing in the ACC championship game.
Yeah,
All these teams keep losing to each other. They're all going to end
yeah.
up with the same record.
Talk about Pac-12 carnage. It's
Yeah.
and obviously the best conference this year, the
Mhm.
Pac-12, but ACC carnage in all conferences at this time. It's just happening everywhere you look. And yeah, ACC, it's going to be interesting in terms of what we think of what might happen or might not happen. If we were to predict, yeah, conference title games, that's a whole different,
Mhm.
unique scenario there. But yeah, for that, I think, yeah, UNC, they've got to make my fallen again. And then number one, I think we talked about it. You aren't able to survive this week, Oklahoma. You basically end, I think, your CFP. Not maybe not
Yeah.
entirely, but I just don't think, from what I feel like this means for Oklahoma,
Yes.
it's just a bad loss, and you've kind of, I guess, almost just exposed yourself the
Yeah.
last couple weeks.
And it's coming off a game that should have been a wake up call.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. If anything, yeah, and
Hmm.
how we covered it, it's like, oh, and I think it's funny, as we talk about, maybe betting records on this, but it seemingly was like telling, oh, like Oklahoma not, I think, Oklahoma was a 9-point favorite. It's like, oh, Oklahoma, maybe it's just trending so easily. Oklahoma's got to, come out as a, response game, right? Statement game
Hmm.
after the, squeaking by, a easy wake up call. Nope. And for that reason, Oklahoma, got to give them my number one fallen of the week. And then transition to know the
Hmm.
positive here this week, or this past weekend, I should say. For Ballin, I got to go my number three Ballin. I got to go with Oregon. I think they
They
just
bowled out.
reannounced that, hey, they've got a puncher's shot
Yeah.
to get to the Pac-12 title game, and if they get revenge on Washington, who's to say? I mean, and with how close that game was in
Oh,
the
yeah.
regular season,
You would have to imagine that they'd be in.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, I think it's simple enough. 35-6 win over a still good Utah team.
Yeah.
Oregon, I think, just outclassed them. And number two, I got to go FSU. Yeah, like I said, I think it wasn't, this juggernaut matchup by any stretch. But for what I think you can take away from the game and what I think that result
Hmm.
means for Florida State, I just got to highlight them, for a ball. And Jordan Travis, I think he's showing he's absolutely capable of being a guy to potentially will his team when when you get into those tough matchups in a title game or potential playoff circumstances. I think he's a guy that, point blank, I just want to have the ball. If he's on my team, I can go to sleep at night pretty well. Um, and then number one, I just got to give him some recognition. Kansas, speaking of, I guess, the funny analogy of UNC maybe exposing or reminding us they're a basketball school, Kansas maybe reminding us that, hey, sure, we're a top five team, and in basketball, we're about to start kickoff this week, but don't forget about us in football. They have, again, they're, I think, showing now for a couple years running post
Yeah.
Les Miles. I mean, Kansas is not a slouch in that Big 12.
No, Lance Leipold's done an amazing job with
Yeah.
that
Oh
program.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean they beat Texas a couple years ago. They started 6-0 last year. They
Yeah.
didn't finish as great,
Yeah.
but yeah, this
Six and
is
two right now. Potential 8-win plus season
yeah.
easily and yeah, comfortably you would think a top 25 finish for Kansas. But yeah, look, those are my Ballin' Fallins for this week. I think it was definitely interesting. Tough to kind of narrow it down to single them out to kind of three for each. And so then I just went for, especially from an individual
Hmm.
performance base. So I just felt it was good to just pick, team
I
based.
liked it.
But all right, I think before we jump into our full on review of this past weekend slate, we will go to our special investigator, Connor, here to talk about another Connor.
Yes. Connor, who has much more experience investigating, apparently,
Yeah,
and
clearly,
being investigated.
clearly.
Yeah. So another quick Connor Stallions update. We don't want to spend all of our time talking about it, but it continues to be one of the wilder stories in the sport,
Absolutely.
getting wilder by the day, seemingly. So just a couple quick updates. A hilarious, but also scandalous picture of
Yeah.
Connor Stallions, or allegedly Connor Stallions, a man who looks very much like him in a baseball cap and sunglasses, dressed up as a Central Michigan assistant coach or staffer, standing on the sidelines of the Central Michigan game, watching Michigan State's signs. the Central Michigan AD, I believe it was, said, we're not entirely aware of who that was in the picture. We're actively investigating it. So if they don't know who it was,
I
that
think
makes me think, yeah,
we can put two and two together. If it looks like, if it walks like, looks like, if it's Connor Stalions, maybe I think it is Connor Stalions, point blank, simply for the who was It's like almost like a Scooby Doo.
yeah.
It's like that little joke,
Hmm.
playful. Oh, who could it be? Well, it's all signs point to Connor Stalions.
Yes. So very funny.
Allegedly.
Very funny. Also, just another piece of damning evidence against him in the Michigan
Yeah,
football
just
program.
another little nugget.
But speaking of evidence about against the program, how did all this evidence come to be? Where did it come from? As we mentioned, there was a private investigation firm that investigated this. Was hired by someone to do
Hmm.
so. That's not public information, obviously. But this was not an NCAA investigation until they compiled, facts and sent it to the
Yeah,
NCAA.
here.
Yeah, and there is now seemingly some evidence that the person who hired that investigation firm may have actually been Ryan Day, which was something we said in jest last week.
Yeah,
We said it as a
yeah,
joke. Oh, Ryan Day
yeah.
called the. No, it's seeming like there's a real chance it actually was him. The
Allegedly.
I said a chance.
Yeah.
But yes, this private investigation firm is allegedly based out of Connecticut.
Hmm.
You know who happens to own and operate a private investigation firm in Connecticut?
James Franklin?
Not James Franklin. It's actually Ryan Day's brother.
Oh my God! No way! You don't say. Get out.
So yeah, maybe a crazy coincidence,
Maybe.
but that would be quite the bomb. I don't know that that will ever become public. I don't see any reason it would have to be, except for
Nah.
maybe some type of discovery in a court case where that would be revealed.
Potentially. Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
which would maybe only happen if like the Michigan athletic department were to sue the NCAA over whatever gets levied against them. So it doesn't feel likely. But if that were to come out that it was Ryan Day, that would be one of the craziest stories I can ever remember in college football rivalry history.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the guy would hypothetically just be making use of resources available to him in an effort to expose maybe a overstep of additional resources that should never have been,
Yeah.
in said person's opinion.
Yes, I'd also like to say that none of that exonerates Michigan at all.
Yeah,
It's,
no, no.
it's like if, your girlfriend goes through your phone to find out if you're cheating, that's wrong. But then if she finds out that you're cheating, that's the more wrong thing. That's
Yeah,
the thing that,
yeah.
So,
He just don't shoot the messenger or the person that helped the messenger become recognized. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, just some funny updates that I thought we had to throw in.
Hmm.
I don't think they really affect anything. We don't know any more than we knew last week, other than
Hmm.
both of those are very funny to me.
Yeah. Just quite the story kind of hanging over, talking about, the creme de la creme, the juggernauts and the big dogs. Just a little bit of a side story. And I think talk about what we, kind of brought up talking about it before last week. I'm just going to be very interested to see with the timing when it does come time for Ohio State, Michigan, what other bits might sort of come to light, if you will.
Yes,
What we
and
might
in
learn.
the greatest rivalry in the sport, in my opinion,
Hmm.
I think in most people's opinions, and maybe the most hate-fueled rivalry in the sport as well. This is only just throwing more gasoline on the fire. So this
Yeah.
year's game will be something. It'll be a
Oh
spectacle.
yes. Oh yeah. Will be absolutely a game of the year, potential game of the year candidate. Connor, you still got your call. You still have your flag that left in your holster. I used mine on Oregon Washington, but yeah, should be. Hey, we're getting into November here. We are going to see quite the matchups and probably only further here quite the stories because
Yes.
this saga is not even remotely close to. It's just getting started. It seems
Yeah.
like so.
Especially with how
Quite.
long NCAA investigations take.
Yep.
We could
Yep.
be sitting here in 2028 going, they're about to suspend,
Yeah.
they're about to reduce
Slowly
the
but surely.
scholarships on the Michigan program.
Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah, finally. But yeah, just slight little intermission here. Sharing some updates here. But yeah, I think, look, with that, Con, you want to kind of segue into just recapping what we just saw this past weekend?
Yeah, I think we can fly through a few of these because we
Yep.
talked about them a
Yep.
bit. We'll talk about obviously the great games and stuff, but
Hmm.
I guess we'll start it off with the first game that kicked off on Saturday. Georgia, Florida. There's a lot of smoke coming into this one that this might be the upset spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
We both, I think, correctly said Georgia hears that, Georgia pins that on the bulletin board. It's not going to be pretty for Florida, and it
Nope.
wasn't.
Nope. Not at all.
No.
Not at all.
Yeah, not too much to break down from the actual game. The one thing I would say is this is probably the best that Carson Beck has looked, which
Yeah.
is
Talk about a potential Heisman hopefuls. I think for him, and then we already touched on him, and I think Bo Nix. Some
yeah,
guys saying, "Don't you forget about us."
yeah. So, and if you're a Georgia fan, that's what you've been waiting to see out of him ever since he showed up on campus as this,
Yep.
next big thing.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
You want to take us to our next game?
Yeah, Ohio State, Wisconsin, solid Big Ten matchup. Wisconsin on a bit of a not the sky isn't falling. I mean they've had a tough
It's a
tough
rebuild
schedule.
year,
Yeah, tough and a tough schedule. You're bowl eligible, so
Yep.
just capture momentum when it's in the following weeks, but wasn't quite an opportunity this past weekend against Ohio State team who continues to show they're I think for real they're a complete team and they can I think they have I think multiple recipes to potentially win or even if the plan A doesn't quite work I think there's a plan B for Ohio State to win which I think is going to be all too important.
Yeah. So a couple takeaways here. This was a much better game than the final score indicates. Late into the second half, this was still a 10-10 game.
Sure.
Ohio State scored twice to end it, and win by 14, obviously. But it was a 10-10 game late in the second half. And my biggest takeaway from this was that neither of these quarterbacks looked like they could play, really. I mean, obviously, Kyle McCord got the win and did what he had to do and didn't look
Yeah.
horrible. He threw 2 touchdown
Yeah.
passes, whatever. But he also threw 2 picks. He also put a ball on the turf that I believe Ohio State recovered, so it didn't end up being a fumble, but could have been. And he was thrown to a lot of well-covered receivers. We talked about Ricardo Hallman maybe being able to blanket Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. still had a great game, but one of those picks was Hallman picking off a ball thrown to Harrison Jr. And there were another couple ones that were highlight reel plays from Marvin Harrison Jr. because he was perfectly covered and he
Yeah.
had to make an
You just can't
amazing
do
catch.
anything. Yeah.
But that's not a ball that should be thrown if the receiver's perfectly covered. So I thought this looked like a little bit of regression from Kyle McCord, a little bit more like what we saw early in the season, not what we've seen in the last couple weeks. Maybe a little concerning if you're a Buckeye fan.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean that's fair. Yeah, fair enough. I think you, there's just something I guess about I guess Maserati Marv. He's just inevitable. I mean, even if Kyle McCord, for all the I guess struggles him or I guess even any Ohio State quarterback, I guess in this offense at this point in time, this team could have against the Wisconsin of the world. I just think it's having that trump card
Yeah.
on offense, and then on the other side of the ball, a great defense who I think can really. I mean, we saw Penn State. No, I mean they're. I have to fact check, but they're up there. I mean, obviously in multiple categories, and ultimately as a scoring defense. Look, if your offense, if you don't have a Caleb Williams,
Yeah.
quarterbacking.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't want to throw too much dirt on Braden Locke, who didn't look very good for Wisconsin at all. But it's his second career start playing against that defense, and they were in the backfield all night.
Yeah.
They looked like Wisconsin didn't even have an offensive line, and that's what Wisconsin does. That's their identity, is like big offensive lines every year. And so this defense is great, and like you said, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a trump card. Like there were a couple balls that
Just
easily
throw 'em up. Just
would
throw
have
it
been
up.
picks
Yeah.
with almost any other receiver
Yeah.
on the planet.
Yeah.
And he was just like, "Nope, I'll take that. I'll reach over your back and take it out of your hands."
Yeah, I mean he's just an absolute freak.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just crazy what he's doing each and every week. Making it look routine when it's truly not. But yeah, I think
And he won't see another corner this year as good as Ricardo Hallman, in my opinion. So
okay, yeah. So and if you if you get that out of the way, I mean it just begs the question: what more we're going to see? Which we know what we can expect from him. And I think enough with that matchup. I think bottom line, Ohio State's going to be in this till the end, and
Yep.
another team very much so. I think Florida State. We've talked about them quite a bit already, but yeah, they are looking more and more impressive. I think week after week. Talk about I guess a quarterback that's only, I guess, if anything, just announcing himself or really reinstating himself into the Heisman race.
Yeah.
And again, a supremely wide open race, which so much could happen. We talk about a lot that we don't think might happen. A lot, I have no idea what could happen with this Heisman race, honestly.
Yeah.
There's so much.
I mean, Jordan Travis put up stats this week that
Yeah.
you just don't see guys put up very often. So that's going to help in the Heisman campaign. Really, my main takeaway from the game here was, yeah, Florida State trounced a nobody, but that's what the elite teams do. They trounce the nobodies.
Taking care of business, yeah. Which, as routine as it should be, it's just, I guess, praise and recognition is deserved in this case. And I think a team that's definitely gotten a lot of praise, a lot of the season, but the last couple weeks, some raising some questions maybe about that. The Washington Huskies.
Yeah. And probably the most perplexing part to me is they've struggled the last 2 weeks, won both games, of course, but struggled a bit the last 2 weeks, but they've struggled in totally opposite ways. Their electric offense that seemed like no one could stop them was almost brought to a complete grinding halt by Arizona State. And then this week they come out, they put up 42 points. Michael Penix Jr., aside from one pick, plays almost a perfect football game. Like, does everything. He's running the ball, throwing the ball, doing everything. And let's see his stats here. Yeah, 369 yards, four passing touchdowns, one pick. That's so, but then their defense is letting Stanford score on them. After their defense was the bright spot in the Arizona State win. Kept them in the game by keeping Arizona State to 7 points. It's a little confusing.
Yeah, I think that's the word. And it just, with more questions than answers, it just kind of gets at the need. You got to kind of figure out your identity sooner rather than later with some, with the games seemingly only meaning more, obviously, with each week.
But that also does raise the point that if both units show up on the same day, how good is this team? Are they the best team in the country if that defense from 2 weeks ago shows up with the offense from this past week?
Yep. And devil's advocating my own question or my own point there. Well, you have multiple ways to win. Then in theory, which makes you, more of a juggernaut and more, I guess, absolved, or you technically don't have so many holes. Because you're multifaceted in that sense. But moving it down to a team that I guess definitely has lost its juggernaut status, steam, going down to Norman, Oklahoma. We've talked about them quite a bit, I think, already, and equally about Kansas and the shine that I think they deserve. And really, like you said, Lance Leipold. Just Oklahoma, it'll be interesting to see, I guess, how they respond in what we thought would have been, the response game this past weekend. How are you going to respond, Oklahoma? That's the main, I guess, takeaway here for me.
Yeah, I don't think I have much else to say on this. We've talked about it a lot. The one thing I would say is, help me out on the name here. Bean, I believe, was Oklahoma's quarterback in this game.
Kansas.
Jason
Bean.
Jason Bean, yeah. I mean, what an awesome job to be the backup, step up in a spot like that.
Pretty electric.
And play great and run like the wind, too.
He talked about a dual threat guy.
Yeah,
quarterback there. It's funny. There's some I guess on X on the Twitter sphere circulating. Oh, looks like the fastest guy alive on a couple runs. But just a fun. I think Kansas just a fun team. Point blank,
very fun. But it's not often that a quarterback does something big in college football, and I don't already know the name. I didn't know his name coming into this week, and I watched that game going, this dude is the real deal.
He's had a couple. I mean,
I know he's played.
Daniels
he's played in spots because Daniels hasn't been too healthy. But
and I think I'm struggling to think of the exact. I mean, maybe it was Texas. Did they play Texas already? Kansas.
They
He
did.
had a five. Bean already has had like
Hmm.
a 5 touchdown. I mean,
Hmm.
he's yeah. Talk about you know, under the radar quarterback play, and I
Yeah.
think he is also a bit of an underclassman or lower classman. So he's if assuming Daniels, I guess maybe matriculate goes to the NFL or he's gone this next year. Kansas potential top 25 team next season.
Daniels is
Preseason.
a quarterback who I like a lot and I'm
Hmm.
really high on, but he might not have the chance to
Yeah,
come back to Kansas and play.
sure. Yeah, no, totally. College quarterback play always so interesting from a week to week
Yeah.
storyline basis. But speaking of, I guess guys filling in
Yeah.
for previous shoes, I guess Malik Murphy and that Texas team really rolling over BYU, who hasn't been a total slouch in the Big
Yeah.
12 this season.
Now, I said when I was breaking down this game earlier that they looked like they were all the way back this week. And the reason I thought they looked like they were all the way back this week was because Malik Murphy didn't do anything that excellent. He didn't look great, and the whole team did still. That's really
Hmm.
tough to do when you're
Hmm.
quarterback. And I'm not saying Malik Murphy had a terrible game or
No,
anything.
but not yeah.
He didn't show out, you know,
Sure.
and they win 35-7.
Yeah, testament of like we theme earlier, testament of the entire team and
Yep.
everybody around, one single player. Obviously the quarterback being, the leader, signal caller,
Mhm.
everything kind of flows through him. But yeah, Texas, it is quite an impressive, manner to do so.
Mhm.
No Quinn Ewers. And I think Malik Murphy, I think he's maybe, maybe not quite the best quarterback performance this weekend by any
Mhm.
stretch, but could I think maybe be just enough though from a game management perspective, doing everything I think ultimately Sark really needs out of I think
Mhm.
a quarterback in his offense. So yeah, Texas, we'll see. I mean, Texas, they're the team to watch. I think for I guess maybe sneaking into the I guess the top four when it's all said and done, relative to I guess where they're currently positioned.
Mhm.
But equally, I guess you can say that about Oregon, who again another 35-6 win.
Yeah.
But
And against probably the best defense in the Pac-12, they put
yeah,
up
no,
35
yeah,
points.
and they were away. I mean, just really impressive performance going into Salt Lake. Utah is in Salt Lake. BYU, the other Utah team, they are Provo.
Yep.
Those guys up there. But yeah, I think just takeaways are Oregon is absolutely legit. And Utah, tough. I mean, tough loss, tough from what really more manner in which they lost. But yeah, wouldn't be surprised. Utah, I mean, Whittingham and those guys. I mean, I think are if a team as primed, I guess, as anybody to talk about response games or really how they round out the season.
Yep.
Currently 6-2. You know, potentially still a good 8-9 win team when it's
Yeah.
all said and done. But
Yeah. I'm not giving up on Utah
no,
yet.
no,
I've been the
no,
Utah guy. They didn't look very good, especially on offense in this game.
yeah,
But
yeah,
but no, that also is probably just a testament to how good Oregon is. In fact,
yeah,
I just called Utah's defense the class of the Pac-12. It's probably Oregon's.
yeah, yeah,
Oregon's defense has played really well this year.
yeah. Oh, 100%, 100%. And talk about. I mean, where is the hole in Oregon's team? I mean, it's talk about multiple ways to win and multiple calling cards. I
Yeah.
mean, man, and I guess it goes back. I mean, maybe my call a couple weeks ago. I guess I'm looking. It's looking
Mhm.
better calling. I guess Big Ten or the Pac. I think somebody is there's going to be two.
Mhm.
Obviously, one from each that emerge, and I think are just going to be too much to handle. And I think
Yeah, I mean,
either is going to have the national title winner ultimately.
you know what they say, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah,
And yeah, I mean, they're going to be so battle tested,
yeah.
whoever gets out of those two conferences. I think the Pac-12 even more so.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. I think absolutely. And yeah, talking about Big Ten, maybe not quite as much, but talk about a Big Ten team that's kind of struggling through here. Penn State. We were talking what it was to the extent of a 33-point line, I believe.
Yeah.
Playing host to Indiana, only a 9-point victory in the end.
And they were trailing for a lot of the game. Drew Aller again didn't
Not.
look very good, and
Mhm.
you know it's tough because he looked so good in the beginning of this season,
Yeah,
and I know
yeah.
they weren't playing great defenses, but you kind of thought it was going to translate, and that's why there was a lot of hype, myself included. I got caught up in it saying this Penn State team is gonna win the Big Ten, like they're the real deal this year. They do it both ways. Like Oregon is what we were all saying Penn State was. Now who knows? Maybe they could still beat Michigan and end up in a three-way tie for the Big Ten East.
Hmm.
And I don't know the tiebreaker scenarios, but yeah, this was another concerning game if you're a Penn State fan.
Hmm. Hmm. No, for sure. And I think it's yeah. I mean, I think it's just quite simple as that. Yeah, you said pretty much everything. Um, Speaking, I mean, I guess just one, yeah, Drew Aller struggles. I guess just one last point here. It reinforces how unique quarterback play isn't with it. I mean, how volatile I guess it can
Yep.
be, and just in the context of just one season. And I guess keeping true to that theme, Arizona, the Jaden Delora, fifth year, I guess, senior guy who's going to be the face of the program, basically playing, headset vest guy to
Yeah.
Noah Fafita, as he leads Arizona to a yet another win over the 11th ranked Oregon State Beavers.
If you could throw out the record books and just reseed everything based on like what you've seen in college football,
Mm-hmm.
Arizona might be like the 11th team in the country right now. I mean,
Uh,
they have three early losses, so they're totally out
yeah.
of contention for anything. But man, they have looked so good since they've made that quarterback switch, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's I mean that's the story of it is the quarterback play. And Jaden Delore is a guy who played a lot of really good, really high level college football before he
Yeah.
came to Arizona this year.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, yeah, he would talk about, I guess, a battle tested, or even just this idea of, we said iron sharpens iron. You just like to think, I guess, they've got something's brewing in Arizona there.
Yeah.
And even if, Delora isn't making that impact, and I think, naturally it was a talking point in, I guess, broadcasts, points to make by
Hmm.
the commentary teams, still plays, a leadership role and can lend, his experience to, a true freshman out there who is just taking it by the reins, in a difficult conference that,
Yeah.
the toughest, and it's just totally, totally super impressed.
Little bit shades of what Johnny Football was doing his freshman year. Little bit.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Hmm.
That's what Noah Fafita Heisman in the next 2 years. This is just a little bit of a, yeah, cooking this freshman season, but
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, Arizona just on such an upward trajectory. Oregon State, not, I guess, similar to maybe Utah. Tough loss, to tough pill to swallow, but I guess definitely a better showing all in all.
Yeah.
But not all is lost. Still can have a very good salvageable season.
Yeah. This is a loss to a good team.
Hmm.
And although Washington State has seemingly disappeared, when they lost to Washington State, that was a loss to a good team. And
Yep.
that's if you're Oregon State, you want to be playing meaningful games. You want to be ranked. You want to
Hmm.
be, losing to other good teams. You don't want to lose ever, obviously, but
Yep.
especially for a program that has not been, super well renowned for their college football abilities recently. This is a
Hmm.
good season. This is a step in the right direction.
Oh, 100%, for sure. Um, and I guess talking about steps in the right direction, just a good season under the radar. I mean, Ole Miss, one loss team. Talk about SEC one loss teams. I mean, look, I think you were much more on this game and what you saw happening with, pretty much Ole Miss rolling over what I thought, I guess, was a Vandy team that maybe could have covered,
Mm-hmm.
the double digit lines, but yeah, Ole Miss. It,
This offense is insane, man. We spent a lot of time talking about the Washington offense. We've spent a lot of time talking about the Air Force offense. Everyone in general has spent a ton of time talking about USC's offense this year.
hmm
not a lot of people talking about this Ole Miss offense, and all they do is score points. They score a ton of points.
They've got
And
guys. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Quinshon Judkins is what, maybe the best running back in all of college football? Like,
I mean, he pretty much made that exact case as a true freshman last season.
yeah,
And he maybe had not as hot of a start, but he's now reminding everybody, yeah, he is legit. Jackson Dart, I mean,
he's
he
having a
can
very good
execute, and
season.
yeah,
Yeah.
he can execute everything Lane Kiffin's asking of
Yeah,
him.
and that's another good point. Lane Kiffin. I mean, the guy has not had the best record as a head coach, but he's been very successful everywhere he's been the offensive coordinator. The guy's an offensive minded, good football coach, and
Yeah.
he's got some guys who can go out and execute. And yeah, this looks like a really good team.
Yep, that's what they're doing. Definitely giving them credit. They're one that I've overlooked for sure. One to watch, I guess, on potentially some future Ballin spotlight for sure. But speaking of, I guess, Ballins, I mean Notre Dame, 58, an absolute stomping, 58-7, a huge win. I guess more so they don't quite crack my list this week because Pitt's just not a good football team, and a lot's
Yeah.
going wrong seemingly in Pitt.
Yes.
Pat Narduzzi made some interesting comments post game.
Some very interesting
Very
comments.
interesting. That seemingly lose the locker room.
You would have to lose the locker room.
Well, on Twitter, I mean, yeah, talk about on social media in the immediate aftermath, we're at just pretty blunt reactions. Like, I forget the exact tweets, but from basically the leaders of Pitt being like, oh wow,
Yeah.
like, oh really, like obviously questioning and being taken aback as they should be.
Yeah.
By comments like that with to the extent, oh, we thought we had guys. Well, I mean, I guess it's maybe a play to, I guess, motivate, but doing that in, I guess, as public of a form that Narduzzi did in that, I guess, press game in the post game press conference. I don't know.
It was certainly a misstep.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, but I don't know how he goes back into that locker room and has any respect from the guys that he called out and said,
yeah,
said like, I thought I had good football players on this team. Turns out they're not good. That's why we're losing. It's not my fault, basically. And
yeah. Totally. Yeah, you use the word total misstep, and
Yeah.
you just wonder. I mean, yeah, it just takes one sentence, only one or two words to, I mean, yeah, lose a locker room, and then we'll see how it impacts. I mean, all areas. I mean, recruiting. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just very, very could be a bit of a turning point, I guess. Where maybe we see a fire at the end of the year. Maybe we see, I don't know, Pitt just such a downward spiral, I guess, for them this season.
it's a horrendous season for them.
Mhm.
And I will say the one thing we keep asking, hey, Notre Dame, you're supposed to have this electric offense. You got all these great weapons. Where is it? I finally saw some glimpses of it. Sam
Yeah.
Hartman still actually didn't look all that great.
But there's enough weapons,
Yeah.
talent that should, round into form, which, in the manifest in the form of 58 points. Good win by Notre Dame. Good showing, I guess. But talk about not a good showing. The UNC Tar Heels. We've talked about this, highlight this matchup quite a bit already in the show. Just, North Carolina. I mean, going from, I guess they were the 17th ranked team at the time here.
They were 10th
or
ranked team
10th
two
ranked
weeks
ago.
Yeah.
Basically now looking like they're not going to be a top 25 team at all season's end.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, I put it as a best bet. I had UNC minus 11.5. And then right after I said it, I said, I should have made that the team total over because I know they're going to come out and score, but I don't know if they can stop anybody. And they couldn't stop anybody. They lost 46-42. Their offense did the job. It's, you score 42 points, you need to win the game. But that's my takeaway there is UNC's defense is dumpster fire, essentially.
Yeah. And just makes my Gamecocks lost earlier this season look even worse. But
especially since they played pretty well on defense that day. They were in the backfield a lot.
Yeah. I mean, we'll move on here. It's in the ACC still. Louisville, a good showing against Duke. Duke, a little bit of a downhill. Yeah, talk about the talk about basketball schools, Duke, a little bit of a tough, I guess Riley Leonard just not looking quite himself.
He definitely didn't look himself.
No,
No.
yeah,
But I think overall the team has to, even if he's not looking himself, has to play better than that.
yeah,
And it was, I picked Louisville to win this game. I didn't think it'd be 23-0. It feels like, the carriage is turning back into a pumpkin for Duke, and
sure.
the rest of this season might trend in that direction too. And all of this goodwill that they built up of like, oh my God, Duke's finally a real football team. It's awesome. They beat Clemson. Well, Clemson stinks, so apparently that was no good.
Yeah.
And they beat Notre Dame, which is still awesome, cool thing to hang your hat on. But it might turn out that that's just what their season was, an okay season where they had one cool win.
Yep. Yep. Nope. Enough. I think enough said there. And speaking of a group of five, Air Force continuing a fantastic season, looking great against a Colorado State team who we thought might give them some problems, but
Yeah. But they did. They did in the first half.
First
It
half,
was.
yeah.
It actually went to halftime tied, but
Mhm.
then Air Force came out, won 17-0 in the second half, and just was executing. And this is a very fun team to watch. If you haven't gotten a chance to check them out, I highly recommend it. They are fun to watch. They are now in a position to. I don't believe they have another super tough test left, so they're now in a probably a pretty easy position to go 12-0 and be playing in a big bowl game, which would be cool.
Yeah, no, just a fun year to see teams like Air Force in the top 20 and even JMU in the top 25 too, just jumping around here, but staying alive in their quest to be undefeated this season. And
Yeah.
I think just show, I guess, the NCAA more as, clowns, how they're not bowl eligible. That's
Yeah.
another thing. But yeah, I mean, they've got everything to play for us week after week and, survive and advance essentially for them, big win over Old Dominion, not the maybe, not the stoutest opponent, but just
As we
stacking
said going into
undefeated.
that game, Old Dominion doesn't have a good record this year, so they don't play a tough schedule, so they clearly aren't executing on things well. But when you look at like the amount of 4 stars on Group of 5 rosters, they're one of the top in the country. So they have the talent, they have the players.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they played a close game with a really good undefeated James Madison team this week. So maybe they did come to play this week, and this was a very good win, for JMU.
Sure. I guess group of five staying in that theme. Tulane, another, again, time and again, they talk about, I guess, programs on just the up and up and up and up. I think Tulane's up there for sure.
And I'm so blind to it. I completely forgot Tulane when I talked about the group of 5 being so good this year. Yeah, Tulane.
Too good. It's
Excellent.
Too good.
Yeah,
Too many good
there are
teams,
too
yeah.
many. There are not 3 undefeated group of 5 teams. There are 4 undefeated group of 5 teams. And
Yeah, or I guess one loss.
oh no, I forgot.
One
Yeah,
loss,
Tulane
but-
does have the one loss. Yeah.
Yeah, but nonetheless,
yes.
still a very good football team.
Yeah, very good
And,
football team. Michael Pratt, a very good quarterback.
Yeah, and I think we went head to head in that game, in that matchup. Rice did covering. I think they scored some second.
Did I
half
finally get a
points.
gut off?
No, I think I was on Rice.
Oh, were you?
I was on Rice.
Oh,
The gut off. We ended up doing no gut off.
surprised
There
it
was no gut off.
I'm surprised I wasn't on Rice there. I've been pretty high on Rice, but regardless, you would remember better than me.
It's yeah. I mean, look, Rice covering. Ultimately, they're a respectable team as well too. But Tulane, I think the story here is Tulane. Yeah, Tulane could be very well a potential another, season where they upset a traditional, I guess, Power 5 conference team in a bowl game, and here they, just the machine, seemingly. But
Talk about Tennessee, Kentucky very briefly. These are 2 teams that were not top 10, so I didn't mention them when I talked about teams I've called frauds. But I've called both of these teams frauds.
Yeah.
It was a close game. That's what happens when 2 frauds play each other.
yeah, just not. I mean, yeah. Talk about just not a lot to take away. Talk about a game where there's really no, major takeaways. Just yeah.
No, I mean, it means it extends Tennessee's season of being a ranked team and having a good season and all of that, which is good for Tennessee. This game was personally good for Devin Leary. I I know that his stock has been dropping a bit this season,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
a lot this season,
It
but
was supposed to be, a good season last year to
yeah.
to announce himself into the NFL. But yeah,
But it was a very good game for
yeah.
him in a loss.
Plaudits,
But
some plaudits to him.
hmm
And then my Buffs, just wrapping up 25 ranked, top 25 ranked teams, rather, excuse me. The Buffs jumped out to a 6-0 first quarter lead against UCLA. Just ultimately the theme with them, they can't protect Shedeur Sanders, and they ultimately are susceptible to allow some points. And that was just the case for, I think, beyond the first quarter,
hmm
really. And yeah, we're fighting for our lives here to get to the 6 wins this season. But yeah, I mean, I feel like another game, not so much to take away. I mean, I don't know. It's just
well,
Colorado's on a downhill spiral. UCLA is sort of bouncing back, I guess, from a couple
mhm.
losses. But yeah, UCLA is a good team.
Yeah. What I will say is this is another game that I think is defined by what was said in the post game presser. Dion saying almost the same thing as Pat Narduzzi. He basically said, "We need to. Yeah, I thought we had O linemen this year, but next year we need to go out and get some real O linemen." And yeah, if you're on Dion's offensive line, how's that feel?
Yeah, can't be good. Cannot be good in the slightest. But I guess if anything, I think prime Coach Dion. I mean, he's the guy that would be. I guess you could see because I mean, look, he blew up a program
Yeah.
and 70 or so 50 guys transferring
Oh,
in.
it will not hurt his recruiting.
No,
He's going to
no.
recruit at a very high level. I think a lot of young players love him and would
Mm-hmm.
love to play for
Mm-hmm.
him. And anyone who does bring it up, he has the persona to be like, "That's what you get when you play for me. I tell the truth. I'm a
Yeah,
truth teller." You
yeah.
know?
He's established himself in this in the sense that yeah he's given himself the leash to say that.
Yeah,
Pat Narduzzi on the other hand, where it's just been a 2-6 seat or
yeah.
2-6 seat, not nearly as much room to say that. But yeah, look, I think rounding out a battle of the cows, USC barely edging out Cal here. Caleb Williams, I think, returned to what we're more used to him looking like. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it was a game Cal led for most of the game, and it really looked like USC was gonna blunder again.
yeah, took a good fourth quarter.
Took a hell of a fourth quarter, yeah. And I mean, that's what you get out of Caleb Williams, I guess.
Hmm.
Is chips are down late in the game, he's still gonna ball out. But I was just a little upset for it. Would have been cool to see Cal win it, like
Yeah, it would have been nice to see. Yeah, but yeah, I guess other other games con to I guess mention you think or
Nebraska with another win. Nebraska's looking like they're rounding into form. I believe it's the first time they've had a winning record in four at any point in the season in 4 years.
it's just
So yeah,
incredible.
they got to be pretty
Yeah.
happy with the momentum, the way things are starting to go
Hmm.
in Nebraska.
Matt Rule looking like the right hire.
Exactly. And he's done it twice before. He's taken two programs out of the gutter and made
Yeah.
them, national contenders
Hmm.
on some levels. So he's. I always thought it was the right hire, but it's good to see if you're a Nebraska fan, it starting to turn around in year one.
Yep. Yep.
Miami, we always mention because I'm a fan. Also worth mentioning if I wasn't this week because they should have lost to Virginia. They beat Virginia in overtime by a field goal. Virginia.
Who's having I mean, for as much as we consider, Virginia the bottom of the ACC, I guess, or in and around that territory, they're making some noise. They're showing
They
their
just beat
respect. They're
UNC.
showing, yeah,
Yeah.
they're showing
No,
some.
they are turning things around
Mm-hmm.
mid-season, which is always
Mm-hmm.
cool to see. There are a few teams in the country, Virginia Tech, another one that it's fun or it's like cool to see a team do that. Start off horrible and then not just roll over and go 2-10 and pick themselves up and go, hey, the season's over. We can't win the conference. We can't win the division. We sure as hell can't win. Go to the national football or the college football playoff, but we can still, get things going in the right direction and, be a team and all of that. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's always fun.
So I guess all we have left to do, Con, is recap some best bets.
Did we have any of those this week? I don't recall making any picks.
I have a funny feeling there was something on the thumbnail of last week's video where I kind of saw like some bars and some lines of that kind of maybe indicated some picks, but I don't know.
I think I was protesting the best bets segment, trying to raise awareness for lack of cotton candy in today's school lunches.
Oh, you know what? That was right. I don't need, so I think I just put some fake graphic. That
Sounds good. We don't even need to talk about them.
Nope. Nope. Don't even have to talk about Pac-12 teams covering 16 points, 17 points, but then not being able to eclipse their 27.5, 28.5 team total overs that were missed by literally a point, and then a field goal that was not attempted that would have hit it and pushed it over in the end of the game, stuck at 27. Yeah, that's all for me that I think might have been the case. But
in all seriousness, I will bounce through mine really quickly. Had Nebraska winner, easy winner, big winner. I'm so smart. Had UNC, they scored 42 points, so basically a win. I did say I should make that the team total over, yeah. So count that. And then I think that Washington pick I made, that was during the protest for the school lunches.
Yeah.
So,
and then I think he was caught up in the protest that he might have slipped. Maybe even confidence in even more than the line indicated. But
sorry, I was trying to make a difference, get kids some cotton candy.
Yeah, we're pro cotton candy, anti candy corn on this show. Of course.
That goes without saying.
Yep. Without saying.
I'm also kind of anti-cotton candy now that we get to it. Sure, that's why it should be in school lunches. Kids love cotton candy. As an adult, that's a hell of a lot of sugar.
Yeah. Oh, no, yeah, 100%. That's awful. God awful. But, yeah, just almost as god awful as our picks record on the show. But there's a path to fading us, but we will right the ship. We are going to right the ship.
I also just want to say, I have a perfect 33% hit percentage. So if you're going 0-3 every week and you want to up that to 1-3, just follow my picks. I guarantee it. 1-3 or 1-2. 1 out of 3. I should say.
Just pick one of the bets that you make. Yeah, just pick
33% chance it hits. Yeah.
That's an elite 3-point. That's a solid 3-point percentage in the NBA.
It was a few years
and batting
ago.
And
still
an
batting
elite average.
Yeah, batting average. I'll take college 3-point percentage.
Yep.
Although there's some real sharpshooters in college, that's all they do. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So, any last words, Connor?
Just I'm Christian Ponder. He's Samantha Ponder, and that's the episode.
Nope.